What's going on, workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
And today we're talking about a spicy topic. Is Final Fantasy XIV story even matter? And this is coming up. Chris, why don't you set up the context? You've been doing some stream lurking. You've been watching a lot of different content creators. And we just filmed our video about respecting our time in Final Fantasy XIV and other games. And now we're sitting down to talk about, does the story in 14 even matter? What are your thoughts?
I mean, Jesse Cox's chat is what pushed me into hitting record, but in general, I've been watching people react. I've been watching Mr. Happy react. I've been watching all these people react to all the new players, many of whom are coming from World of Warcraft. And so people ask what's different. And story is naturally one of the big things that gets brought up regularly as a key difference in the game. And the phrase that got me to hit record was, without story, this game is worthless. That is the phrase that was there, and I believe it was meant to be an enormous compliment to the quality of the story here.
Okay.
But it immediately made
it
me
insults
think,
like the rest of the
at
game.
what cost?
Yeah. It's like your wife used to look like a hippo, but now it's not so bad. All right. What was that like backhanded compliment, if anything? Okay, so that's a really interesting premise, because we literally on Monday covered Yoshi P's interview. I think that actually rolled out on Tuesday, or days are weird when we record ahead. And at the core of it, it's like Yoshi P talking about how story is a critical component. Like, if you think of how different games have what we would call pillars in this regards, like, here are the key pillars of what makes this game its game. What are the hooks that it brings? And Final Fantasy XIV, being a Final Fantasy game, absolutely has that storied hook. Now, I've always been, especially like with my relationship with Final Fantasy, that's one of the things that drove me into these games, playing through the story, playing through the combat and the characters. And I've got so many fond memories. So it just that felt like a natural extension to the game itself. But I definitely would be on the side of not going so far that would basically throw the baby out with the bathwater. If it wasn't for the story in 14, the game wouldn't be the game. And it's like, no, like, the story is, it does matter. It is important, but we have many, many, many examples in this community alone, large creators in this community alone, that it's not about the story for them. It never has been. It never will be. And we see we fight against the constant gatekeepers saying, like, you literally have to play the story. If you don't, you're garbage, you're trash, get out, Chris. Which is, things that we've seen leveraged at you, things we've seen leveraged at other creators who are like, yeah, stories are really not my thing. And so I think it matters. I don't think it's I think without it, like, if you remove it from its pure experience, some game design decisions would be called into question, namely gating, like how the story in the game persists along a narrative, a linear narrative.
Absolutely.
You start here,
Absolutely.
you're ending here, and that narrative has impacted the world. Things have opened up. So game design wise, yeah, but honestly, I would say within 1.23, back in 1.0, the gameplay was solid. The world was interesting. It wasn't so heavily driven off the story, because story actually happens so rarely that you got to experience it. So I think there's a counterexample within Final Fantasy XI, 14 itself, where the story doesn't necessarily mean the be-all, end-all. What do you think?
I think for story to be successful, the story writer has to have the ability to reach out to the dungeon designer and the combat designer, and has to be able to say, hey, I'm doing this thing, like in our last video where you said, would you mind watering the garden? Like, this is the exact same thing. Would you mind if the boss model that you use is this boss, and this is kind of that boss's thing. So, like, when you're thinking about abilities, like, he's kind of like a lightning guy. So if you have anything kind of lightning based, you're like, yeah. I mean, we were going to have like a stacking debuff, and it doesn't matter if it's lightning or ice. The goal was going to be that it was going to paralyze you or freeze you. It doesn't really matter. So if you're saying lightning's good, we'll do lightning. And so that's a jumping off point for them. But to somebody that says, I just want to play a big bad boss and get loot, and there's a mechanic that says I have to go touch this thing or I can't move, that's fun. I enjoy doing my rotation. I enjoy killing the boss. I enjoy getting the loot and the achievement and seeing if I can achieve over this. I don't really care about why we killed him. And so, yes, story had an imprint on that boss, but not for that player. And so I think, especially when we talk about systems in the game that we actually spend the majority of our time on, Story is a one-time playthrough for the vast majority of players. There are people who enjoy New Game Plus and enjoy having multiple characters to play through the story multiple times. There are also people that say their number one most justified reason for using a skip potion is for alts, because like, I'm not doing all that again. That's insane. And so there are people who argue that should be the only use of skip potions. And so that there are people who think, oh my gosh, I loved it once. Like, why? How come I can't skip cutscenes in Praetorium or Castrum? They should just change it to letting me skip cutscenes like it used to be. The story is wonderful, but when you play this game 5,000 hours, it doesn't have 5,000 hours of story. It doesn't have 4,000 hours of story. It doesn't have 3,000 hours of story.
Excellent.
It's spent leveling. It's spent doing combat. It's spent exploring the world. It's spent doing fates, leveling relics, crafting, gathering, running dungeons, running trials. And so to pull the story out just have it be a void of just, this is just a series of fights that you do, much in the way that actually the content of Bozja and Eureka feels, where you're just doing these encounters back to back. I don't really feel that those encounters build on a theme because they pull from bosses that we've seen from everywhere else. I don't actually feel like in the Bozjan front I don't actually feel, me personally, the skirmishes and critical engagements don't actually feel like I'm fighting who they say we're fighting. Like I don't remember anywhere in the lore that it said, okay, you got to get past their Captain Red Chocobo. Right. Captain Red Chocobo is a real, he's a mean guy. I don't, it's a fun fight. And
he
so
slept
like
with my mother, and I'm like,
I don't remember the build up to that, but maybe I just missed it. I do remember a quest where Red Chocobos were a thing, but this doesn't seem tied to that. So the combat is there as a core pillar. And so to say phrases like it's worthless or you can't enjoy the game without implies that the combat isn't good enough to stand on its own. Ishgard Restoration was an enormous amount of hours from players this expansion and got people into crafting in a way that no other piece of content has in one go. We brought back Diadem and shot rocket launchers at things from gatherers. That's not tied to story very well, but it's fun, and people go do it. I was fishing on stream today. That's not tied to story, but I was enjoying doing it. So I think it's really dangerous to say that story. I know people mean well. I know they do. If you like story and you want this game to have a good story, I have good news for you. But if you are somebody who like, I'm not really a story guy in anything. Like I don't really do any story in any game. I don't even play single player games because they're usually too story driven for me. That's not really what I'm looking for, but I have a lot of friends that play this game and I want to play with them. And I was just going to ask you, like, would I enjoy it? Because I was thinking about hopping in. They've been asking me to hop in, but I just want to ask a stranger, like, would I enjoy it? Yeah. But I'm going to skip the story. Okay.
All right.
That's great.
That's the strength of New Game Plus, though, in a nutshell. New Game Plus allows you to go and say, hey, I'm enjoying this. And then when the questions of, why are we fighting this guy? Like, inevitably, that question comes up in some level of degree. In a degree that you will actually take action and go figure it out. Or just like, I wonder why we're fighting this guy, Zonde, at the top of this tower. All right. It's cool. It's a cool backdrop. Do you think there's something out there? Yeah, like you can, there's a whole buildup. It just explains it all for them. So, like, I always kind of try to use inclusive and inviting language because everybody's different. Everybody's going to come into the game for different reasons. The example you give is very, very true and personal to you. Like, I invited you into this game and you were playing catch up, and eventually you sat down and said, you know what, I'm going to see what this is all about. And you had an amazing experience, and one that's having you go back and play through the story again. In fact, if this video can get 10,000 likes, something we've never seen on the channel before, I will do a series of streams where I play through the entire story once again. I'm putting out that challenge. It can't happen over a series of videos. It's got to happen on a single video. So good luck, internet. You do your thing. I like bearing that like right at the halfway part of the video. It's like anybody who's like just in here like, oh, it's worked a game. I'm just gonna downvote their video.
Yeah.
All right.
If anybody raised their hand right now, I was gonna pay for dinner. Oh, nobody?
Nobody?
Oh, well, I offered.
Oh. I think what's gonna get us is when they turn on the clips functionality and people are like, look at what worked the game said. It's 13 minutes. Clip it. But I think that's the beauty of the New Game Plus, because then as that experience grows and as maybe your friends aren't online, you're like, well, what can I do? Well, there's all these offerings for you. I just kind of like to kind of pivot that, is that I kind of wish there was still some kind of progression, some kind of, like, even if it was like 25% the normal amount of experience that you would get by just going and playing through New Game Plus, as just
once
a
per
thank
job
you.
and all these other
once per job, and it's like, yeah, it could have some restrictions, just because for somebody who has just like, I am just blasting through, I didn't use a jump potion, but I hit that skip button as quickly as possible, on to the next thing, now I'm in the zone. Oh, well, I got these other characters I need to level. Bop. Now I want to kind of, now that I have somebody caught up, my friends aren't online, and I can just start kind of leveling and all, and experiencing the story, perhaps for the first time, ever. And I think that's the strength of New Game Plus, and I think that's the strength of Endwalker being the end to the story. We talked a little bit about it in our video yesterday, but having a start and an end, bringing the story together, I think it makes it less intimidating. Nobody wants to sit here and say, like, I don't watch a series. Like, oh, there's like, oh, Brian, there's this really great series on Netflix. There's this really great series on whatever streaming platform. They just finished their first season. Great. You tell me when the second season's up. Like, that's how I am. Like, I'm not going to go get invested in your one season amazing experience and it never get continued. I've done that twice and I'm like, no, thank you. But that's the strength, I think, of Endwalker saying, hey, yeah, you don't need to sit here and like, the story will go on and trail on until you eventually leave and never have that satisfying conclusion. There are conclusions that are occurring in November. And if you've been on the train at all before, if you're new to the train, if you're, like, that, I think is something that can be seriously, like, reducing of anxiety and important because, again, of New Game Plus and of the fact that, yes, the story is important. It's not the be all end all, because I didn't play 5,000 hours of cutscene. This isn't a 5,000 hour movie. This is a game. This is a 5,000 hours worth of, like, I think, great content, great jobs, great community, great dungeons. Yes, I want more. That's the staple of one of the things of the strengths I think 14 has. I don't hear veterans like asking for less. Like, everybody, all the critique I hear is like, man, I want more. Can we get more?
How come they don't give us more dungeons? Why not more Savage? Why not more Ultimate? Why not? Yeah, more story, more voice acting.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's the thing. And the thing that I think that helps bring that about is more players. Yeah. Like, Square Enix is like, oh, we're at 30 million and we've got however many active players. Okay, we can futz with the budget. We're a company.
And they've gotten a lot better, right? Like, quest design across MMOs has gotten a lot better over the last 10 years. It used to be kill 10 things, collect 10 things, go talk to this person. And those were your options. We added escort quests. And then we started moving into things where maybe you use an item, or you're sitting in a vehicle, or you're commanding a person that's not you. There's only so many types of quests. And so they're kind of new the way each game does it the first time you do it. But by the 10th or the 20th or the 100th time you've done that quest type. And so, like, I think the quest designs come a long way. I think Shadowbringers has gotten a lot better at the pacing, how often they're telling story versus how often combat. It's not a consistent. He talked about, Yoshi has talked about in an interview how in ARR there was like a planned, a pre-prescribed number, whether or not it was the appropriate time to tell story, whether or not there was good gameplay to be had. The gameplay light turned on. You got to go back into gameplay. Well, I'm not done hearing about the story. It's okay. We'll pick some meaningless gameplay. You can go do some fetches, and then you'll come back and we'll finish the thought. What? Mm-hmm. And so, like, when they compressed ARR, when they pulled 100 quests out, those are the quests they targeted. Is the quest that never belonged there. They were there because there was something on a whiteboard that was a set of texts, and that was driving the game, not developers. And they've gotten a lot better at being true to it. Yoshi P made the decision during Shadowbringers not to tie devs' bonuses to the Metacritic score. Yeah. Make the game you want to make. I'll take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a better game.
I think that's the thing that echoes, and I hope that others, when the industry studies itself and says, "Oh, that's actually a really good thing for both the development, the sprints, the developers, enjoyment of their job and their bonus and pay structure." Absolutely. Now, I do want to highlight
the highest Metacritic score they'd ever gotten.
I know. Well, I think that
how many
says,
of them are like, dang it, he got us.
like they got. I think that he's got him. I think he's got him in terms of them. He's taking care of them, and I think that's reflective. When you stop worrying about the nuance, when you stop caring about the algorithm, all of a sudden you're like, well, that worked. I didn't expect that to work at all. I do want to highlight one last thing for a final thought for me. Auto Lock On saying, I've played MMOs since MUDs, played a UO Ultimate Online and EverQuest and countless others, and never stuck with any of them as seriously as I have with Final Fantasy XIV, and it's strictly because of the story and the world building. I care about why I'm doing the things like killing boss number 42 for no reason, just to get a gear to kill boss number 43, rinse and repeat indefinitely. It's empty and it's unsatisfying in a vacuum by itself. And that's like, I connect with that. And that's actually one of the things, like when we talk about how then is story delivered, like sometimes it's hidden, and thus you find YouTubers and content creators who go and piece it all together. And then you're like, whoa, this is incredible that this happened and I didn't know. Or sometimes it's actually like, okay, you're taking part of it. Your character, whether they're the focal point or they're somebody as a part of this inner circle that is taking part in this grand narrative that's participating. The events are not just folding around you; they're either happening to you, or in that regard.
Yeah, I think even non-narrative based games are learning very quick that you're trying to cater to a diverse set of players, and there is going to be a set that needs story. So I am not at all by any means saying because story is not required, we should just not have it. That is not what I'm saying. I like that there's a story in games. I just like that story is optional. I like that if I want, I can explore the story later. I've become interested in the story of World of Warcraft much later. The Encourage event is one of my favorite events in any game of all time, and I have no idea why we did it. We had to open up the gates to a raid. Good enough for me. Like, it was awesome. And so like we built a thing. We did it. And so there's these moments that like, and so inviting multiple is the goal. Having one favorite thing as the pinnacle thing is fine, but there's a reason that every restaurant that's iconically known for and reviewed, this is the best burger place in town. They make good hot dogs too. Not everybody likes burgers. And so, that can be on the sign, that can be on the ads that play on TV, that can be what the coupons are for, that can be what the critics and the reviewers are talking about. But when people go, especially in a communal thing where they go together, somebody else can go, they make a really good hot dog. I mean, they got that homemade chili on top. They make their own buns. It's amazing. And that's awesome. Like, it doesn't have to, and that doesn't mean, you know what, they should stop making hamburgers. I only like the hot dogs. No. That's how they got where they are. And so I think Final Fantasy XIV is a story-based MMO. I have known that the whole time. Every time I want to get to the new trial, I have to clear story. I have been okay with that. That is not new. I have been doing that since ARR. It's never bothered me. My brothers played with us for a long time. They liked PvP and they liked the fights. They did their relics. They did. They completed relics, which at the time you and I were like, that seems a little intense. They were doing Atma grind, and they skipped the story. And in Guild Wars, my brother's miles ahead of me, and I'm like, dude, how are you doing that? And he goes, dude, they gave me this ascended piece. You got to go knock out your story and all this. I'm like, whoa, you did story? He goes, yeah. I was like, how long did that take you? And he goes, I don't know, a couple hours. Are you pushing escape? Yeah. Oh, that's way faster than the way I'm doing it.
Yeah.
That's way faster.
Way faster. When Chris starts talking about food, that means it's time for him to go have some lunch. Chris, do you have any final thoughts?
No, other than stream announcements. So okay, I don't know when this is going to go live, but
this should be Friday.
The schedule moving forward for the month of June, at least, and it actually seems like we're settling into something that might last through Endwalker, is on Mondays. We're going to be doing kind of something fun and side content in Final Fantasy XIV, followed by leveling in the second half of the day. That's the day that may flex over the upcoming months. Tuesdays, we're going to be doing Tanko Tuesdays, trying to get better at tanking, trying to gear my tank, trying to get better at tanking, just getting better at being a player. Wednesdays, we're going to take that stress off by casual streams, fishing, crafting, whatever it is. Heavy emphasis on 14, but not only. Today we were fishing in Classic at the same time as 14, because fishing has downtime. Thursdays is going to be a new game, a new MMO. So World of Warcraft Classic, PSO2, New Genesis, New World. That's the sort of thing that'll live on the first half of the day. I'm really enjoying the reactions in the second half of the day. So for as long as that's fun, we'll keep that there. On Fridays, it's Guild Wars. And then, of course, today, the day that this is going live, the stream will be ending early so I can go be on Jebro Unity's podcast talking about what a new player experience is in Guild Wars 2. And actually, he mentioned as a streamer. And so I'm curious what he means by as a stream. What do you mean by that?
It's gonna be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the podcast. And guys, if you're not following Chris over at Gaming Kinda, be sure to do so. All the links are in all the descriptions of our videos. You can always hit us up on Discord if you want to play some games with us. I'm going to be playing PSO2 tonight if you're watching this live. So if you guys hopefully are having some fun, I've been enjoying it. I'll be putting up some videos on that throughout this week. That's my plan now that game's launched. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. For Work to Game, my name is Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you have a fantastic day, and we hope to see you in our next one. But until then,
take care.